Welcome to Follow Your Joy podcast, where intuition is the doorway to your wisdom, your genius, and your joy. I'm your host, Marla Diane, and I've been transforming creative entrepreneurs' lives for over 26 years through two businesses as a success coach and business strategist, and prior to that, an entertainment publicist and talent manager. It's time to make joy your inner GPS for life and business decisions rather than lean on your logic and your reason first. You'll not only be following what is most authentic to you and for you, but you will live the beautiful life meant just for you. You'll come to learn that following your joy is a life and a business strategy. So listen in for inspiring entrepreneurial stories and solo casts that illuminate listening to your intuition is certainly the doorway to your wisdom, your genius, and your joy. Not sure how to access, use, or trust your intuition? Join me in the conversation to find out how. Well, hello everybody. Today's episode, you are in for a treat. After I go through some announcements and a formal intro, you will be taken through a story of what I consider what miracles are made of when you follow your joy, led by your intuition, giving you clues. Because you know what? Success leaves clues, at least in my world. And that's what you will hear from my special guest, who followed his intuition to go to California with $300 in his pocket and took a chance on a dream of becoming a movie star. But his higher self, his intuition, had a different plan. So stay tuned. Okay, so I want to give you an option to ask me a question about any one episode that resonated with you, so that I can answer it in a future episode. So let's have you either leave a review at the Apple platform on my podcast page, or you can email my team, support@marladiane.com, or DM me at Instagram. Right, just send me the question, and I would love to be able to answer a question for you on any one of these episodes, future episodes. As a speaker and a coach, y'all know you get the kind of the honor of participating in online and offline summits. Right now, registration is opening. In fact, at the time of this podcast episode, it's a week before this particular event is going to happen, and that is registration is open for the Wedding Summit Series, the Growth Edition, and it's a 5-day virtual summit that starts the week of August 8th. So that is next week, because this is should be August 3rd that you are listening to this. So let's see, and if you're listening to this during that week, or even after the dates, don't hesitate to sign up, because you can catch up by choosing the All Access Pass option that gives you an unlimited access essentially forever. And this is all for all creative, not just the wedding industry, because I attended the spring edition. It's offered twice a year, different topics, and I attended it and witnessed abundant information, resources, and more for the creative entrepreneur. So being a success coach and a business strategist for creatives, what's happened as far as my background with this is 8 of the 14 years I've been coaching creatives have been with the wedding and event industry. A lot of creatives in that industry. So that's what I'm excited and grateful to be one of 50 speakers in this 5-day summit. Registration, oh my gosh, I had no idea. When registration opened up on July 25th, it's gone gangbusters. Right out of the gate, we had over 600 registered. I had literally no idea. Margot Frazee, the producer and host, and her team are pretty incredible in their huge effort to make it happen. The following she created for this twice-a-year summit. She started it a couple years ago. It attracts over 3,000 attendees for each of these summits. So Yeah, she brings in some pretty high value experts on all parts of you running your business, from mindset to sales to social media, to you name it, every aspect of your business. So that's why I'm saying this really, even though it has obviously more of a slant towards the wedding industry, if you're creative, I'd be there. There's a lots of there are panelists, and there's individual speakers, and there's live webinars, and you name it. And there's obviously networking on the private Facebook group. So yes, super excited about that. And the best thing, it's free, right? It's free, and you have then that option, everyone, to go to the all access pass option. And I think it's like $67 or $97. It's under $100 for you to have unlimited access forever. And you can go to any one of these recorded discussions at any time you want, versus if it was the free edition, or I should say your free option, you only have 24 hours to watch and listen. Definitely highly recommend that. So I'll have the registration link in the show notes. If you want right now, you can go to marladiane.com/IG. It'll take you to a page, and you click on, and it'll take you to the event page. Okay? Let's bring on our special guest, Bob Pranga, globally known as Dr. Christmas, who's a tree stylist to the stars. His company for several decades is a design business that specializes in holiday decor for film and television, private residences, and public events. So thank you for joining us, Bob. Follow Your Joy podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. Here we are on this glorious summer day.
Good. Yeah, no, super happy to have you. Before I launch into your official intro and our conversation, I always like to share with a guest how I met, my guest, or I should say the listeners. And so how we met was through my own virtual assistant, who's your niece. And she affectionately calls you Uncle Bob.
Nepotism at its best,
That's right. Yeah. She, I don't know if you know this, but she and I were having dinner while I was in Palm Springs a couple weeks ago, because she lives out there. And she just happens to mention over dinner, she's going to Christmas Con. And I don't know, listeners, if you know about it, I didn't even know this thing existed. And I said, "What's Christmas Con?" And she starts explaining it, because she was going to be helping you at your booth. And I said, "When is it? And where is it?" And I was so excited, because I love Hallmark. I love Hallmark Channel. Yes, I'm one of those, hopeful romantics. And she explained the whole thing in your booth and what you're going to have. I went, "I'm going." I signed up immediately right there at the table. And so we'll talk about that. You'll talk about what's going on at your booth. That's how I found Bob, was through my virtual assistant. So,
well, that's pretty awesome. I mean, I'm always curious how people discover me, and it doesn't matter where I go. I mean, I consider what I do. I'm a fairly public figure, because I've always said I've always lived my life on an open stage, and my friends will roll their eyes and get greatly annoyed by this wherever we go. But it's always amazing to me, the people that actually either recognize me or they come up and start talking to me. I think it's fun. And so it's not surprising, but this is the first time anybody's discovered me because of my niece. Okay.
Really?
You get that, exalted position.
I get that category.
That sounds really egotistical. Oh my gosh, I don't believe I just said that.
It's so cool. And she just so nonchalantly mentioned, like I said, at dinner, she says, "Well, yeah, I'm going to be with my uncle. We're going to be, I'm going to be at his booth working it." And I knew she was going to be gone those 3 days, but I didn't know where she was going. I said, "So where are you going? And who's your uncle?" So it was really fun. I go, "Oh my God, this is so much fun." Yeah.
Well, we look forward to seeing you there. It's going to be a really big event. It's going to be 20,000 people of Christmas geeks, as I call them, like the comic If you love Christmas, it's going to be in Pasadena, August 5th, 6th, and 7th at the Convention Center. All your favorite Hallmark stars are going to be there. Barbara Eden's going to be there too for My Dream of Jeannie. She's doing a whole, yeah. So I mean, come on in, get a genie bottle autographed by her herself. You know, she's incredible. I mean, she's like 91 years old, and she's out there. You would never know it when you meet her. She's very inspirational. She's like, let's do this thing.
Wow, is she really 91?
Yeah, I think she's
Wow.
91. She's up there. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you and I are around the same age. So you remember when we watched I Dream of Jeannie? Oh my God.
Well, I'm much younger. We watched that in reruns, I'm sure.
Oh, okay. Let me give you a formal introduction, Bob.
Okay.
All right. So since 1994, Bob and Debbie Staron,
Saren, yes.
they've owned Dr. Christmas, a Los Angeles-based company providing custom Christmas and special event design for celebrity clientele, film, and television. And they were stars of their own holiday special, Deck the Halls with Dr. Christmas, and authors of the DK Publishing coffee table book, Christmas Style. They've been featured on numerous television shows, including I remember this one, A Very Brady Renovation. I love that. And the Home Shopping Network, where they were frequent holiday experts responsible for record sales. All right, listeners, so get ready for an entertaining, inspirational, and fun conversation with Bob.
It's always really fun to hear your resume, spewed back at you. Oh, really? Oh, okay. It almost sounds like that Lifetime Achievement Award, and you're like, oh my God, I'm nearly dead. Okay.
Tell us about, obviously, the work you do and why you chose this to be your career, and especially with it being an accident and you made the entire thing up.
Well, yes. I mean, it's a funny thing, this career, okay, because I made it entirely up, because I did not wake up one morning and say, hey, I want to be a Christmas decorator. I mean, it didn't really ever enter my consciousness, truthfully. I mean, I love Christmas. I've always liked Christmas. But I went to New York and everything to be an actor. And, when we first got to New York, I got to work for a place like Saturday Night Live and things like that. And it was a very cool experience. And, right out of the gate, I got a print ad where I was the Cracker Jack boy in the 1980s in print ad. But what I didn't realize, because you're really naive, I mean, I was just fumbling around. Most of my greatest successes have been by bumping into them. I'm not great at research. I'm a terrible student. There's never a plan with me. So I kind of go on my gut instinct of like, well, that sounds fun. Sometimes it's a good decision. Sometimes I might rethink it. But for the most part, where it's always led me on this a bit of a journey. And while I was in New York, after I got the print ad, I realized that once you were known for one thing, nobody else wanted to hire you because it got so public that it became a bit of a problem. That was a lesson well learned at the beginning. But in the meantime, I started working at Macy's Herald Square, which, in that time period, coming from the Midwest, I'm from a small town called Sturgis, Michigan. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, here I am working at the grand department store, all department stores, for Christmas. And it was a really big deal. And while I was there, my first year, they put me in costume jewelry. And let me tell you this, anybody who can survive working the costume jewelry counter, you'll make anything in life, okay? And one day they came along and said, we need help in the Christmas department. So up I went and I started to decorate trees. And while I was up there, actress Mia Farrow walked through. And she said, gee, that's a nice tree. I wish somebody would do that in my home. Well, I was only 21 at the time. And I said, no, I can come over and help you. That Midwestern, oh, yeah, I can help you thing. And so we did it. And I really didn't think anything of it other than I realized that I enjoyed working in Christmas stores at that time. So the next few years, I worked under some of the best window dressers on Fifth Avenue. I learned a lot. I mean, that's a tough boot camp industry. I'm telling you right now, do not go there with stars in your eyes, because but for every one of those, as I call them, the tough cookies of Fifth Avenue that you work for, you learn something. And what happened after that was eventually I got tired of being in, I love New York, but I felt like you get that gut instinct, like I've done what I needed to do here. And my heart has always been in Hollywood and Los Angeles. And so I headed west. You know, when I moved to New York, I moved there with $200 in my pocket, and I managed to survive. And when I left for LA, I had $300 in my pocket, thinking I was doing a whole lot better.
You got $100 more.
Yes, I had $100 more. And, you know, and what everybody always is amazed by that. I go, you know, as a more mature adult now, I'm sometimes amazed that I just went head on, only $300, because there was never a doubt that I wouldn't make it at something. I never had that question that I would starve or, you know, and I'm not saying that we didn't have lean times and we had to figure it out, but I am saying that there was never a moment where I thought I wasn't going to arrive somewhere. And some of the motivation, it's different for everybody. Mine was, I always look back like, if I don't make it here, I have to go back there. And that was like, oh no, that's not happening ever. So I mean, that was part of the motivation. But when I landed in Los Angeles, I ended up working in search of a Christmas story. I ended up working for Kathy Hilton, Paris Hilton's mother. And she put me through an incredible experience, part boot camp and part inspiration and part networking. And because she pulled me aside one day, she really liked what I did. And she said, honey, you want to make it in this town, you watch me. And I learned a lot from her. And it also introduced me a lot of celebrity clientele. And there was another woman there. Her name was Connie Pentek. She was she's that lovely, refined, gracious person that you so seldom meet in today's society. And she knew how to make everything beautiful. And she taught me how to talk to people and, you know, how to finish the sale and how to basically live a little bit more of elegant life and not feel like I didn't come from that world, but she helped me be able to survive in that world. And I will always be grateful to her for that. And so through that process, we started meeting people, and I got the name Dr. Christmas actually from a client who first came in. You know, when I first started out, I was like going, hi, I'm the Christmas guy. You know, I wasn't very creative with the title. And she said, well, when do you work? I said, well, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because when you're younger, you're trying to just get out there and do as much as you can. She goes, wow, you work doctor's hours, kind of like a doctor of Christmas. And I thought, Dr. Christmas, that's really being presumptuous, but hey, I like it. So I went with it. And from that point on, we started marketing it. Now, Debbie came into the picture actually back in New York. She and I worked at a commercial acting school, and she ended up moving out to LA as well. And we decided to get together and start this Christmas business. Now, it's not like we sat down and strategized it. This is literally how it went. I got a job as a manager of a Christmas shop in Glendale, California, over the phone. I told Debbie, hey, I got you a job as my assistant manager. Do you wanna? She said, sure, why not? That's really how it started. And then we started to look at the needs about Christmas. One of the things I always hated about listening to people talk about Christmas was, oh, it's Christmas. Oh, it's so much work. Oh, I don't have enough time. And so we started to think about what can we do? And the original goal was to give them their time back. Now, there was no training manual at that time on how to be a Christmas decorator. Okay. So it was a lot of learning from what we knew at the moment, learning from other people, and kind of piecing it together and creating something. And I realized that we finally had done something when that company, that company we used to do in high school where they tried to figure out what you wanted to do with your life, the advocations like doctor, nurse, that company contacted me and said, I would like to add Christmas decorating as part of the opportunities that people can pursue in the future.
Because of you.
Yeah, because of me. And I was like, really? I mean, I personally would have loved that option back when I was in high school. That was kind of a little feather in the cap. But even so, you can't rest on your laurels. I mean, living in Hollywood has taught me that you're only as good as the last thing that you have done. So, and so you cannot just sit still. You have to keep going. And because of the nature of my business, we're only relevant 6 months out of the year. People really only think about us for 6 months. Now, they think about us quite a lot during those 6 months, but you have to somehow manage the balance between that high impact part of your life and the down times, and what you got to do to keep the thing going. That's kind of like a 10-cent background of how we did it. And once we started getting a few celebrities, what I've learned for anybody that wants to start a business, especially if you enter their homes, what sells my business is they feel comfortable with us coming there. Yes, okay, we do nice work, we show up, we do all that stuff. But if you can make people comfortable with you being in their home, you'll have them forever. And I learned that in LA because it's a very small town. Everybody talks to each other. And yes, a lot of these folks have security up the wazoo, but they like knowing that they can leave and go away for the day, come home, and their home is in good shape. So I always say respect that. And if you ever decide to go into a business really like this, know your clientele and know your demographic. I work in a luxury business, and that's something you have to realize, because Christmas decorations, we don't need them to live. We need them for an emotional experience or the fun or the escape of it, but it's not like a bag of groceries. So you have to understand what you're really doing for these people. You're not giving them a bunch of stuff. What you're doing is giving them an experience.
So where were out of all of that, and that's a wonderful trail. Out of all those pieces, where was it that you learned the most about decorating?
I have to honestly say, most creative people or artisans, this will be the biggest obstacle in your career, is knowing that it's often hard to replace yourself, because creativity often is instinctual. And I didn't think so. I was always amazed at how many people thought, oh, you do this work. I thought, well, anybody can do this. And the truth of the matter is, no, that's not true at all. And not everybody can pick color. Not everybody knows how to put things together. Not everybody can visualize and conceptualize things in such a way. And I guess it's a good thing too, because I wouldn't have a business. But I mean, that was something I had to learn. I truly just have to say, it just comes from me. It just comes from ideas. It comes from a sense of the practical side. You walk into a home, do you want it to match their home? Or do you want to create an experience? Do you want a particular theme? Those things all play into it. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a little bit what you make up. And you hope that people will like you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if you look back, I mean, from the sounds like the first tree you did with Mia Farrow, I mean, that was your kind of the opening, if you will, of your tapping into what you already had, which was this intuitive, instinctual creativity. In my world, I call it you're in your genius zone. And the genius zone has nothing to do with IQ. It has everything to do with what you were born with, your talents, your innate talents that come easy to you. That's what it sounds like to me. Is initially the door was open from that Mia Farrow moment and being able to do the tree, and then connect all the dots, and then you met Kathy Hilton. What were you doing with Kathy Hilton at the time? Were you
she owned a gift shop up on Sunset Boulevard.
Okay.
And so I came in and did all of her Christmas decor for her.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the common denominator all along the way, connecting the dots. So you kept growing and growing with this, talent that was already natural to you. By the way, and I didn't tell you in our before the show talk, my father was a window displayer. In other words, he was a visual merchandiser back in the 60s.
Oh, back when it was great.
And all he was doing, Bob, we lived in the Valley, right? We lived in San Fernando Valley. All his clients were women's fashion boutiques, and he designed their windows. So our garage was his workshop. And I, as a little girl, I was fascinated. I'd sit and watch him create all these props and paint these murals and all these things that were going to go into the windows. This was in the 60s. So I get what you were doing. Totally understand it.
Well, it's fun and it's play at the same time,
Yeah.
because it's also recognizing the art of the balance, so your art does, especially commercially, so your art doesn't overshadow the product,
Right.
but actually enhances the product. The 1980s kind of ruined everything, because everybody went into that, hi, we're going to put a dress, a pair of shoes, and a handbag, and that minimalist movement, and it kind of ruined the department store windows. It was just like, it's about the purse, so let's just show the purse. And I thought, to me, that was such the most uncreative thing I've ever seen. But I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
but there is, and now, there is a look like that. There are people who like clean, minimal type of things, but for somebody who's really creative and likes to create those extravagant things, it was kind of a really.
Yeah. No, and it makes sense too with all the the popularity of the stores, the Fifth Avenue stores, and people would literally, it was a destination. People would go just to look at the windows of these stores, right? So to turn into this minimalist theme, we're like, we came all this way to see that, but again, everybody has their own taste and so forth. I hear you. Let's tell the listeners again that what truly, out of all of this, what really kind of brings you the most joy in your work and your business, and why?
The fun part is in the creation and thinking about what you're going to do. That's always fun for me. The joy is generally, smart answer is like when you get the check.
Well, that's the result of the joy. So let's put it that way.
But that's when you start to get jaded in your joy. Say that the joy of it is how other people react, and actually, truthfully, the amount of different kinds of people I've got to meet. I'm all for the design and the creation, and but like most creators, once you do it, your creation is dead to you. It kind of just, it's done, and you're on to something else, and you're left, and it's on its own path from that point. The joy is really the cool people you get to meet, because I've met, I'll say it, it's a podcast. I always have the saying, I've met everyone from presidents to prostitutes. Okay.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there's not a lot of difference when it comes to what they want and their inner psyche. And they're all people, no matter what, but it's been a very interesting journey, because truly I've been in presidents' homes, and you're home with people out of their formal settings. So it's very cool that you could be sitting in Beyonce's living room.
Yeah, it's a personal space.
And I met more people than I ever would have met as an actor. I mean, I still love the acting, still love to do all that stuff. But I found one day, this was a real telling point for me, is that as Dr. Christmas, I established it. They pick you up in the car, you go to the show, you do the stuff, you get a dressing room, all that stuff that's just fun stuff. But then, I got a job as an actor, and they were like, oh, I had a community dressing room. I had to get there on my own. I had to do all this stuff. And I thought, oh, I don't know about this.
Well, you're a star in your own right. Come on. You get the special treatment.
What it was just realizations along the way of like, when you start out, you always have a list of dreams, and you always have a list of what you think they're going to be. And more often than not, by the time you accomplish what was on your list, it doesn't look anything like how you first started. And it's always a surprise, which sometimes a very pleasant surprise, that, which teaches me that, you didn't think big enough, or for whatever reason. And I think a lot of people don't think big enough. I think we have been trained very often since children, through school, through structure, through parental, through whatever, that we should really just think a certain size so that you can fit into a certain way. And it's always amazing to me when I am literally cosmically slapped in the face, like, wow, I could have had this all along if I had just bothered to think a little bit bigger about it.
A little bigger. Yeah, and add to this equation, this is part of my world, which I know you're going to totally resonate with. It's not only being able to see the vision bigger, but it's tapping into your intuition, Because in my world, and again, with the purpose of the podcast and all the stories thus far that everyone has heard with the interviews, is that your intuition supersedes the intellect. In other words, when you literally tap into your intuition and follow that guidance, which is your perfect example of it, look what happened to your career, is that it is instinctual. It is from the gut. It is when we go there first, because our intuition, call it your higher self, it's connected with, it's meant for you specifically. It's not meant for anyone else, because it's about your journey. It's about evolving you. It's about literally growing what you're meant to do, what you're meant to be. That's what I constantly, when I'm coaching and I myself, I'm really trying to remind myself every day, Marla, go to your intuition first, then use your intellect to take the actions of that guidance. So when you combine dream bigger and listen to your intuition, not your intellect first, I think you got a winning formula.
I agree with you. I mean, I don't like to take credit for everything, because we all know it takes a team of mentors and angels and people to keep you going along the way. And hopefully you will be able to hear them as you go. And my Christmas business actually took off because a good friend of mine, you may know him, Rick Tamlin, he's in the whole coaching thing. And I started with him. I was his first client. And I remember going, and he said, I'm going to be doing this new thing. And Rick had to do it because he was in the corporate world, hating every minute of it, and it caused some health issues for him. And his doctor said, you got to think of something else, because this is poisoning you. He came home one day and said, I'm going to do this. And of course, at the time he started life coaching, was like, what? And I've always lived in the real world a little bit of, yeah, right, okay, I'm going to go rub a crystal now, and this is going to do, I had it all. I had all those things in my head. But my intuition says, you know what? Whether it says help out a friend or it said just do it, you're not getting anywhere with what you're doing. So I did, and we sat down, and he gave me one of the best pieces of coaching ever, because what we realized was I don't really like to work. I like to play all the time. And he finally looked at me and says, why don't you just make everything a game? For me, that landed like a block of cement, like, wow. And from that moment on, my whole career is like deciding, oh, let's make a game. How many TV shows you can get on? Let's see who famous people we can get this week. Yeah. It really resonated for me. And then the instincts, and, I would start to think broader. I allowed my intuition to go, and I allowed it to, I've always been a very intuitive person anyway, but it kind of gave me permission to listen to it. That's a very weird thing to say, but I think we are not taught to listen to it.
That's why I coach it, because we're not. I wasn't. We're not in our society, no fault of anybody's. We're immediately to the practicality, the function, the linear, the intellect, all of that, and that's fine. But that's not how you're going to literally do what's meant for you. You got to listen to the intuition first. We're not taught that, right?
No, we're not at all, and so it's always a nice discovery. I mean, it's something, everybody has it, and everyone has a guide, and we always suffer when we don't listen to it.
Always.
Always.
The point is that what I say is listen to your intuition first, learn how to listen to that first, and then use your beautiful intellect to take the steps that need to happen. Not the other way around.
Absolutely. And, and often when we don't listen to our intuition, it isn't always just us who suffers.
Oh, that's a good point.
I mean, we could have turned down a decision or a gut instinct that could have helped a great deal of people. We've all found ourselves in positions where we have said something, done something, and we've made a huge mess of things because we did something contrary to what we thought we should have done. And it always ends up in a mess. It just does.
It does. It's a fact of life. You said it.
And every one of us has said, oh, I should have done what I knew I should have done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy at that, but it's just learning to trust that part of you. And that takes practice.
It does take practice. And that's the importance. In fact, that's what I'll be talking about in that the Wedding Summit series, my presentation is all about, trusting, right? Learning to trust your intuition to make decisions.
When you're an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
you really have to listen to your intuition
Oh.
because, there's no one to call in sick to.
Right, that's right.
You're laying there going, I don't want to do this. And then you're like,
Yeah.
the other side of you, like, but you have to do this
Have
because
to.
you have to do it.
Two things is you made a really good point about, our success is never alone, 100%, right? It's always as part of that intuitive, joyful journey. Yes. Oh my gosh, are you kidding? Is that between mentors, between meeting people, between, it's never a single solo journey. And that's what's so vital, is to be in a place, obviously, of appreciation and gratitude. Myself, there's no way I'd be where I'm at if it wasn't for my mentors that I've had over the last 14 years. I'm completely different as far as I operate and how I, operate my business, how I think, than I did, in 2008 when I started. I am like so grateful for these people that, helped me.
And they step up in it. And sometimes it could be a homeless person on the street.
Yep.
You get your messages from how you get them.
Yep.
And I have found that I get most of my help from people I don't know. Because, as friends and human beings, we can't help but color our messages to people we care about, often. And so sometimes when you really need to hear the honest truth or the primal impulse, you got to hear it from somebody you have no relation to. And that could be the shop clerk at Walmart who says something just off the thing. And you're like, oh, okay. And those moments because you hear things and you're like, for some reason that stuck with me. Things that you hear through the days that stick with you, I say pay attention to, because they may not make much sense in the context that they were delivered. But when you start to put them all together, then you start to realize like, oh, okay, they all may be the same message, but delivered from different perspectives. And I believe the universe keeps doing that until you get the one you need to get.
That's where I was going to go, is that it's not a happenstance. I know you know this.
Yeah.
It's not happenstance. And when you really subscribe to the, metaphysical, spiritual, way of life, and that is we can get, yes, messages from all other, places, from a person, from a license plate, from a billboard, from something on the, radio, wherever, in a book. Is that those messages, but when it comes to actual people, yeah, that's a great place to be able to get those. Oh, I needed to hear that. It's one of those moments, right?
It's one of those moments like, I needed to hear that. Yes, I did. Sometimes it's a spanking, and sometimes it's truthfully, it really is. You're like, okay.
Yeah. But what's important, I think, that you pointed out, which I'm sure you out there, listeners, you can agree, it's about being conscious. It's about being aware.
Yeah, and we've all had it happen. I used to be a tour guide, Hollywood tour guide, and it was a part of my life that worked when it did, and when it didn't, we were done.
Yeah.
And every so often we all have those days. Even with the Christmas industry, I love it. It's been very good to me. But there are days when you're like, oh my gosh, can I do something else? There's got to be more to this. And we start our whining, and then all of a sudden it never fails. I'm always in the car, and what pulls up to me but a Hollywood tour van right next to me, and I'm like, all right. I got it. Just, stop the whining.
Yes, I'm grateful. Okay. Thanks for the message.
Thanks for the message. Okay, I get it.
So tell us a kind of a quick, joyful, if you will, story around a particular celebrity that you did their home. It turned into, and I'm sure they all are positive experiences for the most part. But yeah, what ones really sticks out for you?
Well, I can tell you two quick ones.
Okay.
Because they're different contexts, but they're both joyful in their own way. One of the early ones was I got a job working for actress Lana Turner. Okay, those of you old enough will know Lana Turner. She was a big star at MGM Studios. Anyway, it was a year before she passed, and I went to her house, and I remember going into her house. It was all white, And she was this tiny little woman, fully done up like an MGM star. And she was beautiful nails, but she was smoking, even though she was dying of throat cancer. She was, like, whatever. And I remember sitting there while there's decorating. She goes, "So, kid, how'd you hear about me?"
Kid.
And I said, "Well, Miss Turner, you're a big star. Of course I know you." She's, no, kid. How'd you hear about me?" I said, "Well, I also happen to work for actress Debbie Reynolds at the time." And I said, "Well, Debbie Reynolds referred me and she goes, and she looks at me and she goes, 'So what did Debbie say?'" And she takes her cigarette and she drags on it and blows. And I go, and I went, "Whoop, whoop, whoop, whoop," and I went, and I don't know what I said, but something, "Oh, you're a big star, and, I'd be great to work for you," or something. And I remember her putting her cigarette down, and she sat back, she looked at me and she said, "You know what, kid? You're going to make it in this town. You know what?" And I said, "Why? I'm only 24 years old at this point." I'm like going, "No, why, Miss Turner?" She says, "Because you know how to keep your mouth shut."
You know how to say the right things.
I knew. I was like, wow, that was a huge lesson. And later on, I got to privilege of working with John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. I've been in the business by this point, and now I've gotten very used to the celebrity protocol and the security issues and stuff like that. So it was very unusual to be called to stand up to John's house. And there was like no security. You walked in through the garage. I had to knock on the back door like I was visiting my Aunt Joanne. And I was like, and I'm like, knock, open the door. And Chrissy's in there cooking soup. I said, "Hey, guys, it's Bob, Dr. Christmas. Never met them before." And she's like, "Oh, come on in." She says, "I'm making some soup. It's not very good, but you're welcome to have some."
God.
And I was like, and John comes in, and they're huggers. There are people just, "Hey, how are you? Come on in." They were just such a lovely surprise. They've always been a joy to work for. And I mean, I don't know how you say that. They were just, and I saw them on the sofa, and I'm not talking out of school here, but I said, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Well, we're going over the grocery list." I go, "You guys do your own groceries?" She goes, "Well, nobody else is going to do them for us." I don't know. I had been so long in this town that, people have people to do everything for them here. So on a side note, if you have a service thing that these folks in Los Angeles would want, this is the town to come and make it up, because you can do anything you want here. And somebody will need that service. That's the small commercial. But having, that's a small commercial on the side. Yeah, and so it was really amazing to me and very joyful. And they were just lovely. I mean, I couldn't ask for nicer people. And sometimes, because you don't always get that, but you adjust and you work on the business side of it, and you still try to do the best you can. I used to say, and this is very important because this is why they came to me, but I used to say, I specialize in the difficult and the crazy. And I couldn't figure out why I kept getting them. Well, it's because I kept saying that.
You have to reaffirming it.
Yeah, I kept reaffirming it. And so they would come to me. And, well, I learned a lot from them too. I learned how to maneuver and navigate and try to find that moment in each of those people, a spot of happiness or contentment at least. There are some crazy things that went on.
I'm sure you probably could write a book on all that. So
well, I'm working on it right now, actually. Somebody approached me about, because they want to know how I got from Sturgis, Michigan to Beyonce's living room.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, I don't want it to be just a book about stars. I mean, they'll be in there. I said, I want it to be about the people along the way who helped me on the path. I said, the path was not always one of sparkle and glitter, and the Christmas part of me didn't start until my late 20s. So, I mean, there's a whole foundational part of me that got me to that point. So, but yeah, as it goes along, I mean, I'll even I'm going to test the title here. What do you think? It's going to be called Tales from Under the Tree, Confessions of a Hollywood Ball Hanger.
Goodness sakes. Oh, that's hysterical.
Isn't that, I mean, because I want it to be fun, but I want it to be inspirational. And the point of it is that I want that fat kid sitting in the Midwest, that was me, who was sitting here dreaming of nothing else but getting out of here, that you just got to find your tribe. Yeah. I mean, truthfully, you just have to go out into the world and find your tribe and build your power base of support and people who are honest with you and will tell you honest things and not just there to blow smoke, so to speak, because you learn more from the no's than you do from the yeses. That's what I've always found.
Yeah.
that brings me great joy when we find a sense of like, I love a challenge and I love when I figure out how to get in there. And sometimes it's just by accident. You know, I got our first TV show with Lisa Gibbons because nobody told me I couldn't just call her. I think you get further in life not knowing the rules, truthfully.
But
And I just called her one day and said, hey, I talked to the receptionist, said, hi, Bob, I'm Dr. Christmas. She thought I was a real doctor, so she put me right through. Next thing you know, I'm talking to Lisa Gibbons, who's like, who is this? And I said, Bob, Dr. Christmas, I thought it'd be really great to be on your show. I love blah, 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 blah. And she said, okay. And so I booked myself on the show. I mean, everything we've gotten, almost 95%, and that included my acting. I did it myself because I'm not a big believer in waiting for somebody to do it for you.
yeah.
That's just me. Now, not everybody can do that. So if you're not that person, start to assemble a team of people who each have the certain strengths that you lack, and you work as a team unit, and you can make it happen too. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah. Love it. Oh, God.
It's just crazy business. I mean, there are no rules. I'm like, dream it, wish it, be it, do it. That's all I can say.
I think there's something to say about being a rule breaker. It's like that's the gumption, that's the naivety of things, which is what sounds like to me what happened for you. And sometimes that works for us, you know.
Well, you know, you often have to look at why the rules are in place.
Yeah.
And then you have to realize who put them there.
Who put them there? Yep. Like why and why status quo? Why is that there? For what reason? Who started that?
I'm not saying you to be a lawless citizen, you know, just the crazy people busing into people's homes. I mean, come on now. But I mean, at the same time, there's a lot of nonsense and noise that we have put into the world as a society that, like, come on. And I think we all learned a lot of that during the pandemic.
Yeah, that is for sure. And there's something that you shared with me before we came on, which I subscribe to myself, and I highly recommend for everyone else. And that is, you know, a tip of advice for creative entrepreneurs, and it has to do with vacations in your calendar.
You know, my workaholic friends, and if you're listening, or any of you out there, you know who you are, where every morning is a syllabus, and, you know, every morning is like a duty, a task, or whatever. Just imagine if you looked at your year's calendar and went through and filled out days of everything you wanted to do. Go to Paris, go to Disneyland. I want to take a week off and go to the beach. I want to read a Stephen King book, so I'm going to take these 4 days to do this. And put everything you ever want to do down, and then build your work around that. And that's not a concept most of us were raised with. We work really hard and hope we can plan for our little 2 precious weeks somewhere that is dictated by someone else generally, and we have to ask permission to do. I go, that's not living, because think of it in a smart way. All those things you put on the calendar, I'm going to guarantee you almost 98% of them you'll get to do if you do that. Because you now know what you got planned. You'll now figure out how to do it, and you'll figure out how much money or whatever it is you need to do this stuff. And if you don't quite make the goal, you move the date on it and put it somewhere else. You don't scratch it off. It's just, it becomes a very much more interesting way of doing things. And it's worked for me.
I think it's brilliant. And it's not the first time I've heard this. And in fact, my coaches along the way, one of my coaches that I then pass on to, you know, my clients, is she said to us, she said, first, at the beginning of the year, as you're planning your goals and you're planning this and that for the year, please put on your calendar first, put your vacations and build your business around those. And
Absolutely.
Something as simple as that was such a mindset shift, right? And what even more so what you're saying is all the things you want to do for the year. To me, that's a joy factor. I mean, that fits my theme all the way. It's like, follow your joy on your calendar. Make sure you put at the beginning of the year all the things you want to do. And here's the piece that's really important that I tend to coach, you know, my clients around and remind myself, is that it's non-negotiable.
Yes.
If you know darn well where I'm going with this, is that a lot of times we'll put it on the calendar ahead of time and then we'll change it, right? We'll change it for something work related.
Right.
And so that's going to be my addition to your formula is make it non-negotiable.
Absolutely. In your non-negotiable, what that simply means is not, if you choose not to do it, you choose to do something else that you're enjoying, not because you're going to have to work for it. You know, it's a very, I like people to be a choice. So sometimes we get so excited by this. The first time you do it, you're like, I'll do this. And you may find yourself going, oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun. I'm exhausted. And that's a great place to be. But, you know, I'm with you. Non-negotiable fun.
Yeah. So that's a tip, everybody, of many, as you've probably heard with Bob, for, you know, for being that high achieving creative that we all know and love, is that use that tip for how you man your calendar or woman your calendar for that sake.
And know that it is, and I don't want to make this sound elitist, but know that you're in a special group of people when you are a creative person, because we don't see the world the way everyone else sees it a lot of times, you know, and cheers and love and compassion to all of our brothers and sisters who can work 9 to 5, a 15-minute break, an hour lunch hour, and be totally content and go home. I mean, we need them too.
Yeah.
We need them too. But that is not our job in this lifetime.
Right. That's right.
But we have to work in tangent often with them. So there are ways to do it, and I'm a big believer in that. But just don't ever accept the fact that, and people love to make fun of creatives because we have all kinds of labels about us, you know, from being lazy to airheads to whatever. They don't know what they're doing. You'll never have nothing. All those messages that come to us by the workaholics.
Oh, okay. I'm not so sure I heard those, but okay, I'm sure.
Well, see, we come from the Midwest, which is it's a very different kind of environment. And I often, if you don't work hard, you're not a good person type of thing. If you don't have 3 jobs, you're lazy. You know, there's all kinds of stuff that has been implemented. And so, and it still persists, it still persists. It's just being aware that when you're a creative, and often you find yourself in those situations, you have to find another list of voices to hear, because there are other people out there, such as yourself, and people who are like, oh, you don't have to hear that. That doesn't apply to you.
Yeah. No, you have to find your tribe, and, I can get into a whole discussion around that whole mindset around, you work.
I know we're about joy and intuition here today, but I just said every so often that joy sometimes is found very easily when you know where to look for it.
That's it. And there's your advice, everybody. So, Bob, tell the listeners where they can get in touch with you, and I'll have this in the show notes as well. But what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, the best way to go, you can go to the website, drchristmas.com. All the boring emails and phone numbers and all that stuff is listed there. And, you might have fun looking at it because there's a lot of cool stuff to look at. You can do that, or email me if you want it, docxmas@gmail.com. I mean, it's all there at drchristmas.com. You can find me. Yeah.
Okay, terrific. And again, I'll put that all in the show notes. So, Bob, thank you so much for being here with us. And it was obviously, it's a ton. We could probably do a whole other episode with all these different things.
It's really fun. I look forward to seeing you with the Christmas Con Geeks. And
I know.
Bring your ugly sweater.
I'm staying the night there, Bob. I literally booked a hotel so I don't have to drive back home. So I'm going to be there Friday and Saturday.
Oh, you'll love it, Barbara and everybody. It's fun. It's a big fan show, So, and there'll be panels, and it'll just be fun. I mean, the Hallmark people are fascinating. What they built is pretty incredible.
It is.
It is. It's a great little. I call it a respite. Because you can always know you can go to that network. And it may not be believable on every level of what they do, but sometimes you don't need it believable. You just need that respite, and of course you could die of diabetes from all the hot chocolate they feed you.
By the way, the connection, you could connect the dots with Bob with Hallmark. You've done a lot of their sets, a lot of their Christmas.
Yeah, we've done a lot of the Hallmark stuff, and I've worked with them a long time. And so it's a little inevitable.
That's inevitable. So that's why Bob's there, not only because of Dr. Christmas, but because it's one of his clients. Hallmark is one of his clients.
Oh.
So wonderful. Thanks again, and thanks everybody for listening in. This has been a fun discussion. And remember, always follow your joy.
Wasn't that an inspiring conversation? Hey, thanks for listening in. You can find more entrepreneurial stories and resources at marladiane.com. And while you're there, enjoy my 3 free downloads to up-level your business and your life. And how about you take a screenshot of this episode and tag me on Instagram by sharing your highlights of what you learned today. I'd love that. Until next episode, take care.